season, and that means it's bug season. Heck, who am I kidding? It's always bug season in Texas. And that's why you need Grandeur Pest Solutions in your corner. They're locally owned and operated. They're trained, they're trustworthy, and they have a proven record as they have been in business for almost 10 years. They provide pest control against ants, bed bugs, bees, roaches, fleas, wasps, mosquitoes, rodents, spiders. If it crawls and you don't like it, they're probably going to take care of it for you. Now, they serve all of the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and they're locally owned. These two guys have been running this business since 2013, and every year they get bigger and bigger. But you know what they still do? They still have great customer service. In fact, if you get a hold of them, they're usually going to have your quote and your job ready to go within 48 hours. That's pretty good. Now, you can call them for a free estimate at 469-809-1769. You can find them online at Grandeur4, that's the number 4, shore.com. You can also find them on Facebook. Just type in Grandeur Pet Solutions, and we are so happy that they're title sponsor for Outdrank the Coverage in 2023.
Hey, I mean, that was a good point.
I think we might start seeing some go back.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Texas 2-Seam Outdrank the Coverage Happy Hour right here on L4 Media. My name is Ryan Fox. Happy Jackie Robinson Day as we welcome in Terry Bennett and intern Noe. Gentlemen, how are we doing tonight?
Doing great. How are y'all doing?
I'm fantastic. How are you, Noe?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. I'm glad you guys are doing well. Happy
You okay,
Monday.
Noe?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Why?
You,
Why do you ask?
you seem a little down. That's all. Just want to make sure you're okay.
You got a case of the Mondays.
Got a case of the Mondays.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the Texas Rangers are in Detroit right now in the top of the 8th. They lead 1-0, coming off a very tough Houston series where they dropped 2 of 3. And now with the lead heading to the 8th in Detroit. Terry, let's start with you. What do you make of that Houston series from them dropping 2 of 3 on the road? Just because it's a tough road series they're starting. Now they've gone through Houston. They're in Detroit, who started off well, and then they're finishing this road stand against Atlanta too.
Well, I mean, you're finding out why we haven't had a repeat champion since the Yankees in 2000, and we've only had, 17 of them in 100 years. It's really hard to repeat, and it's also really hard to do anything when you have the injuries you have, them and Houston. It's a slog of a season. It always is. I don't want to ever be a gatekeeper of fans, but you can tell the Rangers have a lot of new fans from the playoffs on and don't understand you're going to have weeks where you win 2 out of 6, and it's just going to happen. And and it sucks. It was against the Stros or the Astros, but the week before was a great start for the Rangers, and this was kind of balancing it out. I think it's good for them to kind of get on the road outside of Texas for a while and just kind of see the rest of baseball.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, again, like you mentioned, the injuries, they've had a flurry of injuries just in the last week. You've had Josh Sborz. Then you have Brock Burke breaking his hand, punching the wall after a tough outing. And then now you have Cody Bradford entering the 15-day IL with a back injury, which led to the calling up of Michael Lorenzen today from AAA Round Rock. And he's had a fantastic showing in this game 1, showing against Detroit too.
Well, yeah, he was going to be a starter anyway. He didn't come up just because Bradford got hurt. He was, in fact, Bradford was really just kind of carrying that spot until he got back. Bradford had pitched well enough, though, being 3-0. So the good thing is when Bradford comes back, you're starting to see possible some of that depth we want to see in the rotation. I want to go back to the guy that broke his hand. At one time that was almost an admirable thing. Oh, your emotions. That's the kind of thing now that gets you cut. I mean, that's just stupid. I don't care how angry you get, how mad you get. It's the old joke of you never throw a punch with your pitching hand. That is just dumb.
Yeah, it's dumb, but that's just how that series in Houston went. And then again, we mentioned at the top of the show as well, it is Jackie Robinson Day. All the players donning number 42 across Major League Baseball today. Terry, we were talking before the show, and you had a really fun idea about having the weekend or the opening weekend start with Jackie Robinson Day.
Yeah, I say start the season on the 15th. Just start it on April 15th, make the whole weekend or the whole 3-game series. I say weekend, you when it hits the Thursdays and Fridays, but even if it's in the middle of the week, who cares? It's baseball. Have the whole first 3-game series, everybody wear 42. You make it a big old deal. And it just it's the start of baseball and Jackie Robinson, day or week, whatever you want to call it. And I think that would promote it more. I think everybody wearing the number alone's already kind of gotten stale. Everybody just goes like, oh yeah, it's Jackie Robinson Day, and then nothing else.
Yeah. Go ahead, Noe.
My problem is, when would the season end?
Well, I mean, you're talking about what, 10 games? 10 games. We're not talking a month. I'd get it if the season started March 15th, but we're talking at the most 10 games each year.
Let's be more specific. Right now, a lot of teams have played 15 to 16 games.
Okay.
That is
2
a
weeks.
lot.
That's 2 weeks of the season.
That's pushing really close to Thanksgiving.
So, no, it isn't. You could, if you extended it out on the back end, you're right. But you don't have to extend it back. You can sprinkle those games in through the year. Look, if you don't want to promote an African American, Noe, that's fine. You get to make that decision. That's not me. No. Yeah, the Dodgers have played 19 games, but remember, they also did that thing where they went out and played a series. And if we can play a series in South Korea the week before, we can fix the season to where it starts on the 15th. I'm just saying.
Well, I'm trying to think of a solution where we can still keep it at 162 games, have the playoff format being the same way.
I think you just sprinkle the 15 games through the season. But yeah, I agree with you. If you're saying that if you just added it on the back end, I totally get what you're saying there. But again, I think you could just, that's literally a couple days each week that you would alter the days off. But I would think that it would also, the players would help because it would set everything a little later coming into the season. But yeah, it's something you'd have to deal with. But I feel like it's just gone stale with the 42, the number. Everybody wears it. You'll get SportsCenter mention it a couple times. There's a couple articles, but there's not any real celebration of it anymore.
They make a big deal about it today. It also falls on tax day, but yeah, April 15th is still a big day in the baseball realm. I think legendary Yankee closer Mariano Rivera was the last one to don that number permanently. So yeah, it's a special day. I don't mind keeping it, obviously, but yeah, I don't know if you want to start the season that way. It is a good discussion, but I'm fearing that if you start it on April 15th, there's going to be a push to decrease the amount of games in the season to 150.
I have no problem with that.
I don't have a problem with it necessarily, but I do like that MLB has been shortening the games using the pitch clock.
Yeah.
So for me as a viewer, I'm okay with watching a game knowing it's going to be more fast paced. It could still be 3 hours, but it's just more fast paced, and I'm happy with that.
Yeah, I wouldn't have a problem with 150. That's a good round number to me for a baseball season. I'm fine with 162. I'm not like pushing to have it shortened, but if they did shorten it 150 games, I would have no problem with that. And then it would, it'd make any kind of records would mean that much more because it's in a shorter, amount than they are now. Rangers right now, it's now 1-0 going into the bottom of the 8th inning. Rangers are up. Let's go ahead and talk about it because it's the 8th inning. I think the biggest thing, guys, that's worrisome about the Rangers start, it's the bullpen. Again, that's a little frustrating.
Yeah, Jose Leclerc has had a tough time adjusting. He kind of had a rough spring as well. I think he just pitched a scoreless inning in Detroit before they brought in David Robertson. Actually, no, I think he pitched the 7th. He pitched a scoreless inning in the 7th. I think Bruce Bochy's kind of started him to move him more towards the middle, and that's something that Terry and I talked about last week, kind of towards the middle of the bullpen to kind of try to get his confidence back in more low-pressure situations. So when he starts getting his confidence and starts getting his command back, then they can start slowly trickling him back to that closing role, at least more consistently. And another thing that Terry and I have talked about is that, Bruce Bochy is one of those managers where he doesn't need, a solid everyday starter, because he's good with keeping up about where his pitchers are at each point in the game, how they've pitched in their recent outings, where their health is, how much rest they've had, yada, yada. And he knows where to put them in those spots on a game-to-game basis.
Yeah, I haven't seen a manager in the modern era that really understands managing a roster for a full season the way Bruce Bochy does.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know, like with San Francisco, it was a championship one year, and then they didn't make it back the next year, or they didn't make the playoffs the next year. But like Terry said, it's really hard to repeat right now in modern MLB.
Mm-hmm.
So that's fine. But yeah, just him able to, if he can just respond this season with a winning record, considering all the injury issues the Rangers have had, knowing full well the Rangers won't have a full roster until after All-Star break, and considering the injuries and the players that had the injuries and their age, this team won't really be at full strength until 2025.
And they weren't really like that for most of last year either. Corey Seager went out with a couple long injuries, and then Josh Young had an injury similar to the one he sustained now with his wrist. He fractured one of his fingers or part of his hand, and he missed almost 2 months and didn't come back till late August, right before the postseason run started. So this team showed they had a lot of resiliency last year, and they faced injuries all year long. More so early in this season, all the injuries have been pitching for the most part, which, again, we talked earlier, that's similar with the Astros. They've just been – I think all 5 of their starting pitchers have been on the IL at least some point. We're barely over 2 weeks into the season. So the injury woes was something that the Rangers dealt with last year. It just didn't happen as early on as it has so far in the 2024 season.
Well, okay, so – I've been thinking about this and knowing I've kind of talked about this on the air, off the air, and I think even me and you talked a little bit about it last week, Ryan. I'm concerned. I don't know how to explain this. I'm concerned that the Rangers won a year or two earlier than anticipated.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm concerned how much are the owners actually going to truly, truly be invested in staying at or around the salary tax threshold. Now I know, some good bookkeeping things like DeGrom will come off the books next year. Scherzer will come off the books this year unless he comes back and has a great season. I can see him wanting to play one more full season, but I could also see him retiring after this. So you're going to have, but I just sometimes worry, did Texas win the World Series a couple years too early, and possibly now what could have been a true, I don't want to say dynasty, but a true 5 to 10 year window where the Rangers are making it every year or competing for it every year? Are we going to lose that because we won the World Series too early? That's the only fear I have, because we don't know how truly invested this ownership is going to be to sustain the salary over 10 years or so.
Yeah, and that's a good point, especially when you look at the young core of players. They're not going to be on their rookie deals forever. You got the young guys like Wyatt Langford, who didn't play today. They rested him and Seager today, as well as Evan Carter, who's really picked up the bat as of late. And, of course, is a solid defensive option in the outfield as well. All those young guys, you're not going to – and Josh Young, too, you're not going to be able to pay all these guys, what they're, on the trajectory to earn in the years to come to keep them all on the same team. So I think it's one of those things where you got to win now as much as you can, because it'll come to the point where you're going to need to pay these guys. And there's so many young, great players on this team, as well as the solid veteran talent, that you're not going to be able to afford to keep all of them on the team.
Well, the Astros have done, they've shown how to do it in the modern era. They kind of broke through in 2015, finally won a championship in 2017. And you kind of saw, they had the 3 or 4 years where they were just not really good, and they finally made the playoffs. They had a great young core of players. Now they ended up having to get rid of players like Correa,
Springer.
and Springer in free agency.
And some of those have actually worked out for them.
Exactly. They still had a very strong farm system where they were still able to promote some guys to the majors, and they're still going to be relevant for the next probably 3 to 5 or more years.
Are they? I mean, look at them now. And I know it's early, but I mean, you could, everything you just said, you can go to the 2010 Rangers and say the same thing. I mean, in 2016, yeah, they collapsed, but in 2016, you could make the case that that was actually their best regular season of that stretch, and that was 6 years in. The Astros are kind of doing exactly like that. John Daniels said it best a few years ago. If you're not the Red Sox, the Dodgers, or the Yankees, you're going to cycle in your great players. You're going to hold on to them as long as you can. You have to let some of them go because you can't afford them. And eventually you're going to have to tear it all down and start back over. I think the Astros, depending on the moves they make, they're very dangerously starting to look like they might be at the end of that run.
Yeah, I mean, you could sort of see it. But, I mean, they, again, like I said, the Rangers have a good farm system. Houston had a good farm system.
But the Astros don't anymore because they've used them. That's what I'm talking about. They're now at the part where they're starting to have to figure out ways to draft perfect in the 27th position instead of having 3 straight number 1 draft positions.
I still think they can keep a lot of the core right now. They'll still be pretty competitive and be in position to have a chance to get to the World Series for the next 3 to 5 years. Kyle Tucker wasn't really even part of that 2017 team, if I recall.
No, neither was Yordan Alvarez.
Yeah, so they had already had a plan going in place. Now, to your point, Terry, it could very well be where they're just depleted now, and it could be a situation where in 3 to 5 years they're back to being where they were in the early 2010s. But we'll see what happens. Right now they're starting to get some free agents coming in. Jose Abreu. Verlander back again.
Yeah, well, but Abreu's been terrible for them.
Josh Hader.
I mean, he blew the first save, and since then, I mean, look, right now the Astros have 6 wins, and 4 of them are against the Rangers. So, I mean, they have, and they're losing right now the Braves 2-1, and they have issues that go just past just being their 5 rotation guys are hurt. That is a bad thing. But I mean, they're at that era now, or that spot now where Texas was in 2015 and 14, where you bring in the Prince Fielders and things like that. You're having to make changes on the fly. And if you hit on those, I agree with you. They could extend this easily another 5 years. But if something like Prince Fielder, or for them, Jose Abreu was a huge money deal, and so far he has been terrible. Like, he hadn't even been good. Like, there's a case to be made, if he wasn't making so much money, the Astros might have already moved on from him.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
And that's why it's hard if you're not a Dodger or a Yankee, and not even really a Red Sox. The Red Sox are kind of pulled back from that now. But if you're not a Dodger or a Yankee, you're gonna have to build your farm system up. Make sure you hit on all your high drafts. Make sure all those carry through the farm system, and then hope a couple key free agents can be brought in to fill whatever you need. And then you just have to run that for as long as you can, and then you got to pull back and start all over.
Yeah, and I think when it comes to the Rangers farm system, I think a lot of those guys, they moved up through the system a lot quicker than even maybe the Rangers front office had anticipated.
Hitting side.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, historically, the Rangers have not been able to develop good pitching, through their farm system. They've always had to, pick someone up at the trade deadline or just pick someone up from free agency just to get by pitching. But when you look at AAA, I mean, Jack Leiter, he's had a great start at AAA Round Rock as well. He pitched the other night. He pitched 6 scoreless innings, no walks and 10 strikeouts. So I mean, although that's probably a little later than the Rangers have probably expected. But if these injuries continue to be a reoccurring problem for this Rangers pitching staff, Jack Leiter could have another chance to come up and try to earn a spot in this rotation, or maybe in the bullpen, depending on where the injuries and pitching needs is. But Jack Leiter, man, he's had a great start. And then another draft pick, Kumar Rocker. I mean, he's been out because he had that Tommy John surgery last season, so who knows where he'll end up. And then Owen White, he made his major league debut start last year, and he hasn't done very good. He didn't have a strong spring, but it's just historically the Rangers on the pitching side just haven't been able to develop, consistently productive pitching.
That is so odd. It's like the Chicago Bears and quarterbacks.
Yeah.
It makes no sense. We're talking about, and in the Rangers case, we're talking about multiple owners at this part. There's just something weird about Texas and developing arms. I mean, and we've had some pitching coaches and pitching ideas that are really well regarded. Mike Maddox is well regarded. He does great with the current staff. He did great when he was here in the early 2010s. But even his, and I don't really honestly know. That's one of those things. I don't know what a major league pitching coach, what they have to do with the philosophy of the whole, the system. But it is just odd how for 45 years, the Rangers, the closest that they really legitimately came.
Kevin Brown.
As a core was the 86 group that had Bobby Witt and you had Juan Guzman and a couple others. And then injuries just deflated that. And then Bobby Witt could just never find the control. And you've had one or two come through, a Kevin Brown, a Kenny Rogers.
Mm-hmm.
People forget, man, until Kenny Rogers became a solid starter, he was an annoying relief man forever for the Rangers. It felt like he was there for 20 years. They've had one or two guys, but yeah, they've never had a core group of arms move through together and become the rotation of the Rangers.
Yeah, and it is one of those things. It's like you said, the comparison of Chicago Bears and quarterbacks. That's a good comparison because who's the best quarterback in Bears history?
The one they're about to draft.
The one, okay.
I mean, I don't know when Justin Fields is holding up the Super Bowl for the Cowboys in 2 years, we'll have that discussion again.
You mean Trey Lance?
Oh yeah, is it what Trey Fields?
Listen to you,
Trey Fields.
Aaron Jackson Hendon says this is all true, but teams have figured out through their farm and clever moves without capital, i.e. Baltimore, i.e. Tampa Bay, i.e. Arizona. Arizona's made it.
About that.
Go ahead.
I agree, but what was the end result?
Exactly. That's exactly what I was about to say. Arizona's the only one, and they've lost in the World Series. And even then, they came in at 80-something wins. Things broke right. I mean, it was a great run. And I think Arizona's a team that's young enough to be consistently around. But it wouldn't also shock me that if in 5 years, Arizona's not even got close to the World Series again. Tampa Bay, hey, look, Tampa Bay is the epitome of they win with little stuff, but they also only get so far. One World Series, and they lost it.
Two appearances,
two
both
World
losses.
Series, they lost both of them.
Yeah.
And for some reason, just randomly, the Rangers own Tampa Bay in the playoffs. You got to give the Rangers credit. Outside of the Toronto collapse, when they make the playoffs now, they seem to go for a while, as long as they get Tampa Bay in the first round.
Because that happened in 2010 as well. They started the postseason at Tropicana Field. Then you have Cliff Lee pitching a gem to get through that as well. And
he was, that guy was lights out until the World Series.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, he was everything you wanted. And even then in the World Series, we were also just happy to be there. And San Francisco is just a really good team. I do want to go back, though, talking about the playoffs and talking about how Bruce Bochy did the bullpen last year, and he gets all the accolades in the playoffs. But let's also remember the bullpen is why the Rangers weren't, and I know now it looks great because they went undefeated on the road, but the bullpen was the reason why the Rangers weren't hosting the playoffs. I mean, if we talked about it last week, if you just talk about an average bullpen last year, the Rangers would probably win 100 games. And so, yeah, you get credit for the bullpen in the season, but you almost literally didn't make the playoffs because of your bullpen. So I trust in Bruce Bochy, but I still would love to see some true bullpen stability in the Rangers, for a season.
Yeah, and last season, the Rangers, they had the worst record in Major League Baseball in one-run games. And I think if they weren't number one, they had to be top three in blown saves.
Oh,
in
they
the
were number
regular
one by
season.
a lot.
Oh yeah, they were number one, and they still managed to get 90 wins. So that's a great. Yeah, if they just had an average bullpen at best consistently throughout the season, that would have been a triple-digit win team, no doubt about it.
And if we're being honest, all three of us have watched the entire postseason last season.
Mm-hmm.
Did you really trust the Rangers in those late game situations with that bullpen? I didn't. Leclerc was like, Chapman was like, I don't know. But they ended up getting it done. But it almost seemed like it was, I always felt like I was on pins and needles. So I don't know about y'all, but that's how I felt.
I was the exact same way. I was the exact
I've always
same.
said the reason the Rangers won the World Series is how the first two rounds went. Set them up so perfectly because they swept. They really weren't challenged. I know Tampa Bay, I think in game one, had a moment in the eighth inning, but it really set it up to where all you asked your bullpen to do was to be good for two series. And hell, they almost didn't against the Astros. And again, the Astros were a great offensive team last year, but yeah, in the Astros series, I had no confidence. Now in the Arizona one, I did, simply because Arizona wasn't a great offense. Arizona was a very average. Again, Arizona's young. Arizona's going to be better this year. I don't know if Arizona ever makes the World Series again, because everything just broke 1,000% perfect for them to get to the World Series.
Yeah, I think it was the same thing for both teams, because Arizona was 84-78 at the end of the regular season last year, and they kind of like the Rangers had to fight through a gauntlet. You know, the Rangers had to go through Tampa and Baltimore. Baltimore had won 100 games. I think Tampa did as well. And then you look at Arizona, they went through the Dodgers and the Phillies. You know, they had to go through a gauntlet as well to get to the World Series. And again, I think it was, like you said, Terry, just everything broke open and it's just the stars aligned, and it just set up that World Series matchup last year.
Yeah, but Texas, at least during the year, played like the number one team in the American League for most of the year. Texas, everybody, like almost every playoff preview, because the day after the season ends, right before the playoffs, and then previews the seasons, me and Noel send each other 1,000 different links of just different, and almost every one of them had the Rangers as, if they're not making the World Series, don't be surprised, because they're good enough. They've just got to get that bullpen right. Mm-hmm. Arizona literally came out of nowhere. Like, this was not, Arizona, even in August, nobody thought Arizona was going to make the World Series. So there was a little bit difference to that. And again, without the bullpen problems, Texas probably wins 100. And I feel the same way this year about it, though I think they regress a little bit towards the means. But you just got to figure that the bullpen's going to be a little bit better. We're in the bottom of the ninth now, by the way, 1-0 Texas.
Yeah, I think they sent Kirby Yates out there to close it.
Loading it right now to see.
You want to talk about a guy who's had a phenomenal, start for the Rangers. He's been consistent. I think his opponent batting average is like 0.63, and he has no wins, no losses. Terry, Rangers won. Yeah, they won 1-0. So Kirby Yates gets the save right there in the bottom of the ninth, and the Rangers finally get back in the win column. That's a good turnaround victory, and it's a good Detroit offense that they kind of shut down today. Again, it's early in the season, and I don't think there's any high hopes for Detroit, the Tigers this year, but the way they started.
No, the Tigers are good. The Tigers are a lot of people think the Tigers are going to win the Central this year.
They showed a lot of promise last season. There was a point mid-season, like around like a little bit before the All-Star break, where they were starting to figure things out, and they tail it off a little bit. But they were much better than what people projected, and it just kind of starting to carry over in this season. The whole I love the month of April, just because we can just predict anything that's going to happen, and we'll be wrong. Right now, the AL Central looks very competitive, except for the White Sox, who we thought they're where we thought they were. They're 2-13. They're not going to really contend. They'll be lucky to get to 60 wins. or maybe they'll get 65.
Yeah,
We'll see.
they're a team that's not only bad, but they don't have anything. You know, they hung their hopes on year before last and last year, and they don't have any other. You know, like they don't have the future coming up yet. They're going to have to make some decisions. Aaron Hendon, we were talking about just the Detroit as in general, not like their offense. Detroit in general is supposed to be one of the teams that contend for the Central, though the Central isn't really competitive right now. I mean, to me, baseball and the AL, as much as I love the Rangers and what the Astros and them competitively, it's the AL East. The great thing is it feels like they all kind of beat up on each other.
Well, the AL East, yes, but that's mainly because all 5 teams are 500 and better right now. I say the AL Central is actually not as bad as what people are thinking, only because 4 out of the 5 are actually somewhat competitive. It's just that last team that's bringing everybody down. Kansas City, they gave Bobby Witt that fat contract, and
And Cole Reagans, former Ranger, he's had a great start for them in the pitch starting rotation as well.
But again, like what people are going to say, it's April.
Yeah.
So they feel that maybe Kansas City might be 2 years away. So they're going to have a good first half of the season, and they might tail off after the All-Star break.
See, my fear, you bring up Kansas City, my biggest fear as a Ranger fan is that I don't want Texas to become Kansas City of 2015 or Washington of 2019 and just not. Now, the great thing is even if the owners decide to go cheap, the one thing you're right and wrong about, yeah, eventually they're going to have to play Langford and Carter and Foscue if they perform, but that's also baseball control. They have them for a while. Like they're not going to have to worry about them for 5 years, I think, minimum, as far as any kind of contracts. So at least that. But yeah, I don't want to win. I don't want to do, and I don't want to be like the 2011 Mavericks. Like me and Noe talk about that. You look back now and you realize that, Mark Cuban kind of took that love of that championship and just threw away 7 years of basketball and not really caring because he won a championship. And I don't want that. I want Texas to consistently be a team that is at least winning 85 games for the next, foreseeable future.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, speaking of the Mavericks, Luka's got to win MVP this year, right?
Jokic will win it. I love Luka, but Jokic will win it.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. I'm looking at Jokic. He is having basically his second best season. 2 years ago was his best season. This is probably his second best season. He'll probably win. I mean, honestly, I really think Embiid probably should win just because of how bad Philadelphia was.
Yeah, kind of proved the point.
And then kind of like what you and I talk about, Terry, with Dak and Tony Romo in 2015, Dak in 2020, where if they're out, that team is terrible.
And it kind of proves the point.
And then once Embiid came back with the Sixers, they went on a big winning streak. This year, you could go with, sometimes you wanted to go with the best player on the best team. This year is Boston. Jason Tatum having a great year.
Yeah.
You could go with Oklahoma City and SGA. He's having a great year. He's young, marketable guy. Yeah. So, if you had me predict who's going to win MVP, it'd probably be Jokic.
Yeah,
they got the 65 game. Yeah, I think no, just mean that like in jest. It kind of proved. By the way, how would you like to be Philadelphia's first round opponent? And
I was going to mention that New York.
Yeah, it's same thing in hockey though for the Mavericks. I mean, for the Stars, they're getting the bad luck of they might be getting Golden Knights.
Who they're 0-3 against this year. Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's you want to talk about
regular. You know what though? The good thing is regular season really doesn't matter come playoff time in hockey.
Good and bad. Yeah, you're right.
So just that I will take that. And I went to a game recently. They look great. They're 3 lines deep. They're the same line basically from the first line to the second line to the third line, which I like. I like the consistency. They're always going to be in a game. This is a better team than the team that made it to the conference finals last year.
Oh yeah, I mean this team should contend for a cup.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, even the Golden Knights being the team they might see in the first round, Dallas should win. We'll see. Wanted to talk a little bit about, because we haven't really got to do this on the Rangers show or even with you and me, Noe, on Happy Hour, just all of baseball. Like, what are your thoughts on how the season has started, Noe?
It's about what I thought it would happen. The Yankees have made some good moves, and they're kind of basically the best team in baseball. I like the fact that Craig Counsell left Milwaukee, and they're still doing pretty good, and Chicago's not doing as well. I love that Kansas City and Pittsburgh are kind of representing each other's leagues as teams that shouldn't be where they're at, but they're doing good. They have offense. They're winning games. It's kind of like what I like about opening month of baseball, just surprises coming out.
Yeah, you say the Cubs are only. I mean, they're 9-6.
Yeah,
but
I just like the fact that Milwaukee is doing better.
Yeah, they're 10-4. Yeah,
maybe I'm a little petty. I didn't like that Craig Counsell left Milwaukee the way he did. Me personally,
Yeah.
kind of like the basketball team, how they fired Griffin, hired Doc Rivers. They had a losing record with Doc Rivers.
So, like, are you on the Brewers side or Council side?
Kind of on the Brewers side. I don't know. Mainly because I love their uniforms. They kind of went back to some of their.
Absolutely love Brewers uniforms. I just kind of felt that he left Milwaukee because he realized, for good or bad, Milwaukee's going to be kind of like Tampa Bay. They're gonna be just good enough to be consistently in the playoffs, but not quite pay enough to finally, like, let's win it. And I can see as a manager that gets frustrating, man.
And Aaron on our chat brought up another team that I'm very excited about. I was excited about this team last season because they were starting to make a run. Cincinnati Reds.
Yeah, you and I've talked about this. One of my favorite players in the '80s was Eric Davis. Yeah. I love the Reds team that beat the Athletics in the World Series. Barry Larkin, Lou Piniella was the manager. We were just talking the Nasty Boys bullpen last week for some reason. Yeah. But yeah, I've always enjoyed watching the Reds. I've hated to where they've become because, them and Pittsburgh just have become, just all they're trying to do is get the revenue sharing, and they're not really trying to build winners. And it finally feels like the Reds are finally trying to build a winner.
We just talked about the Pirates.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no, you're good.
That's like their management. All they care about is profit.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And like you could tell, ever since Barry Bonds and Bobby Bonilla left, they've made profit every year. It's just they don't really care to produce a winner because they don't really need to. They're not incentivized to. Now they got this beautiful, smaller ballpark. They had a run with Andrew McCutchen in his first run with the team in the mid-2010s where they were winning 90-plus games and getting to the playoffs. But, they were like the Athletics and the Rays. They were just, they're in the playoffs and then they were out immediately. So
a front office caring about profits more so than winning. Where does that sound familiar?
Everywhere.
Wait, where are you going? What are you talking about?
Cowboys.
Oh, you don't believe that, do you?
I do. I think Jerry Jones has always cared about getting the revenue and the money first.
Well, yeah, he's cared about the money, but to me, this is why I love even what we call a baseball happy hour. Just get us talking, and we're going to randomly go through sports.
Yeah,
there are 1,000 things Jerry Jones is at fault for. Believe me, I think Noe and I, either on the air or off the air, have went through them. One of them, though, in my opinion, he always wants to win, and it's not just about money. If it was just about money, he wouldn't always be up against the salary cap. Heck, he would just do like other teams and go 10 million under and just pocket that money. I just don't think they've made the best decisions at the right times. But I will say, I will defend the Jerry doesn't want to win. I don't believe that at all. You watch him after a game. I mean, that's the one thing I think that maybe keeps me kind of liking Jerry Jones, is at least when they lose like they did against Green Bay, he is acting and reacting just like me and Noe were in real time. So I do think, I thought you meant the Rangers, because I do think that that's what happened 2015 to 2022.
Oh yeah, that too.
And let's be honest, as much as I dislike the idea of the ballpark, the new one, just because of how it looks, there's no World Series without the ballpark being built and them realizing, oh, we can't just build a pretty ballpark. We also have got to build a team too. We would have never had a World Series because the owners were definitely just about making money for 7 years.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And it was kind of one of those. It's not just you build it and they will come.
Yeah.
You got to put talent in there as well. And I think again, what got that ball rolling was Marcus Simeon and Corey Seager, and I think the Rangers have made a better effort to acquire talent over the years. Now, this offseason, again, they didn't make any huge big name signings. I mean, they signed Tyler Malley, who's injured. He probably won't be back till July. And they picked up guys who a lot of people kind of brushed off, like Kirby Yates. Look at the start he's had. Now, again, it's April. I get it. But he's had a fantastic start in what has been kind of a lowly bullpen so far. So, I mean, I think that's a good point. I think the Rangers are in a better mindset of spending to get players in here to start winning more so than they were in 2015. And I think the stadium is a big factor in that.
Yeah, and I don't have a problem with them not signing Jordan Montgomery, because what people didn't understand, I never understood the Jordan Montgomery for $100 million anyway, just because his career has not shown that he's that type of pitcher. I thought the management did a good job of being restrained on that. Maybe the Bally's thing actually helped them there. And I'm fine with them not wanting to hit the tax threshold right now. I just don't want that to be a thing coming up every year now. And that's, hey, if Leiter and Rocker perform like they should, then we don't have to worry about payroll, because again, the control they'll have over them once they hit the pros, we're talking well within this. I look at it, we have a 5-year window with Simeon and Seager left. So let's see what they do with that 5 years.
Yeah. And then again, the Rangers, again, they won again, 1-0 in Detroit. Michael Lorenzen in his first start of the season, first start as a Ranger, gets the win. Kirby Yates, aforementioned, gets the save. Trying to see who starts tomorrow. I need to get an eye on that. But the Rangers, again, another big win on this road stand. But looking ahead of that Atlanta series, what do you think going into that series? Both Terry and Noe, what do y'all think? Do you guys have an idea of what you think about it, or will kind of their series at Houston right now kind of change that at all?
Go ahead, Noe.
I want to give a well-thought opinion, but to me, it's still just early in the season.
Yeah.
Atlanta is still trying to figure things out. They lost a key starter earlier this season.
Yeah, Spencer Strider, and that's a point of topic we talked about last week, was all the Tommy John injuries, and if the pitch clock was a correlation to that. Do you think that there's any correlation there?
Maybe to an extent, just because it's a new rule, and these guys that are stars in the MLB, they never grew up with the pitch clock. So now this is a new thing that it might have affected them. But I think that's just to an extent. I don't think it's 100% the reason. I just think, honestly, like a lot of, or not a lot, but like there's some high school players that will purposely just get Tommy John surgery just to take the 1.5 years off, just to go ahead and get it over with, because they feel that they're going to get it when they're in the MLB, if they make it there. I don't really think it's as big of an issue as some people are making it. As a fan, I love the pitch clock because I need the game sped up. I'll be honest. Baseball was perfect for when it was created. I know baseball's been around since the 1850s, 1860s, but like especially in the early 1900s, America's pastime. People would go during the day, go to the game, go home. 4-hour game, take some time out of the day just to enjoy the day game. There was a lot of great teams back then. That was great entertainment back then. We need to make sure baseball keeps up with the modern time. And I really think something like a pitch clock helps with it. What they did in the late 90s with, I'm not saying, a lot of them were juicing, but just the amount of home runs that were happening back then, just the power that was going on. What I liked about then versus now is they still kept a good batting average. So
what you mean compared to now?
Yeah, now I mean it's just not prioritized. It's just some of the star hitters now are not prioritized to have a 300 batting average.
Well, I mean, batting average isn't. I mean, we're old school by fans today because we even talk batting average. A lot of people don't even talk batting average when it comes to what they consider a great offensive player. It's OPS and WAR and all that. We can have that talk in the offseason one day about WAR because I have no problem with it, but I think it gets overvalued now. I think people use stats that are very I don't know. I don't even know how to talk about it. It's not a concrete stat, but we treat it like it's a concrete stat. And so, yeah, but I agree with you. Again, and you and I've talked about this. It wasn't just the Rangers being bad. Baseball had become unwatchable till we had a pitch clock because everybody was standing around. It's base to base baseball. It's all that kind of stuff. And it at least the pitching clock has created some kind of urgency to the game.
Yeah, and it's funny. It took an MVP last year to kind of bring relevance back to the stolen base, the art of the stolen base.
Well, it took him enlarging the bag too.
Enlarging the bag too, yeah. But yeah, like there's some good statistics that are just being thrown away for gimmick stats like WAR. And I know there's a place for it. I know there's a place for it. I just feel that I think, like Aaron is mentioning in our comments, it is very overrated. I think it's okay, but it's kind of like the BCS in college football. I didn't mind that rating system they used, but I think it would have been perfect for the current playoff format where it's 12 teams.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind the not BS, the BCS, their rating system. Rate 12 teams. Perfect. And then the top 5 have to be Power 5 conference champions. And then give me 7 wild cards based off of your computer rating. I'm okay with that. Because 99% of the time, I'm going to probably agree with that.
Yeah.
Top 12. WAR, to an extent, I'm okay with. But I really think it's a stat I'm okay with, but it's a stat that I think people over rely on. And I'll end it there.
One of my biggest issues with it is you can't debate the validity of it with somebody who's a WAR believer. Again, like a lot of things in life, the internet has created where people treat that certain things that they believe like a religion. And there's like, no, just like, let's just sit down and talk about, okay, why, like my biggest issue with WAR is it's literally talking about wins above replacement, which means the average baseball player. Okay. But doesn't that change? Like, what if in your lineup, you're the guy replacing Mike Trout? I mean, I know they go back to, well, that's why it's average. Okay, but what's the average? I mean, it's just it just becomes a weird thing. Like, okay, so how do you decide that he's 3+ wins above the average player? Like, there's no true formula. It's very subjective. And it's the same thing with all the defensive stats. And now we've got things like, oh, yeah, he was a great first baseman, but we don't value first base defense as much as we value other defenses. And that's not even makes sense to me at all. Like, yeah, I get it. Shortstop gets more outs and plays more of an impact than, say, first base. But it doesn't mean that first base all of a sudden is, oh, you can be bad at first base. I mean, because you still got to be able to catch the ball and be good at that. And like Aaron said, you can't even get the same thing from site to site. Like, what is their formula? Come up with a formula, and I think then you can make it where people will digest it better, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because the wins above replacement stat, it's literally it's an estimation. There's no ground solid metric that you can measure. It's all an estimation. It's all a guess, basically, at the end of the day. So, I mean, I never really looked at it that way with much, like when it comes to the contributions a player makes, it's not really solid enough of a stat for me to look at this guy's WAR and be like, oh wow, he's been amazing for this team. I'm probably more traditional. I
But
probably
that's
look
how
at
they're
more on
deciding things now.
What's that?
That's how they're deciding things now.
Yeah.
War is your war, and then I can't remember the other one. There's a something else: S war, B war, L war. I don't know. That's I mean, seriously, that's what it is. No, I just can't remember which one it is. But yeah, I mean, they're just like I said, averages mean nothing. Pitchers wins mean nothing, which I have no problem with. Pitchers wins always kind of made weird, but like things like that. And I'm fine with baseball changing because we're literally talking about we like the rule changes, and I'm fine if you make WAR be one of those stats. I'm just asking to come up with a consistent formula like passer rating is in football, a consistent formula that we can use that, as Aaron says, it's not changed from website to website. We all know what it is, because hell, we could create our own WAR then and then start using that and say Mike Trout is 42 wins above replacement, and who are you going to argue with you on that?
That's why I was laughing, because I was thinking in my head, I'm like, we should do a show where we just come up with new stats. Some maybe semi-legit, some just ridiculous, like WAR. But yeah, no, y'all are making good points on that. I agree with y'all 100%. Go ahead.
Vodka above replacement.
Oh, speaking of which, I know this is Outdrink the Coverage. I am drinking Goodnight Loving tonight.
Oh, sweet. I'm drinking water.
Wow.
I was drinking water.
Yeah,
okay, so y'all are better than me. Okay.
Well, no. Actually, it's the exact opposite. You know that the fiance bought a car, and Friday night we over celebrated to the point where I don't do this much, but I woke up Saturday actually throwing up and stuff. And so
congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. So I wanted to be able to outdrink when we do our show this Friday. We're doing our Outdrink the Coverage, a look backs, honorable mention, the 1970 rivals for the Cowboys, and then the Green Bay episode as the number 4 team. And so I want to be able to celebrate that. And so I had to make a decision. So tonight I'm just drinking water.
Yeah, and then next week we'll have the NFL draft show as well on Outdrink the Coverage as well. And you'll have to prepare your sobriety for that one.
And we're having Monday nights. We're having Monday nights. We're having a month of Mondays because we had our normal last week. We're having this one this week. We're having our normal next week. And then Noe and I've already decided we're going to do my dad. We're going to do another Monday night, a happy hour to kind of recap all of the draft, which is going to be fun. Because we haven't really got to do that. Last year we just did the draft show for the first round, and I think we waited a couple weeks and then had a regular show. So it'll be fun to do a draft recap the Monday after the draft.
Yeah, and then we'll do a show Monday next week.
Yeah, we're gonna do one next week. That's our regular. And then of course it wouldn't shock me if we're doing these in the off weeks again. These live kind of Texas 2 Seam happy hour. Baseball talk that turns into everything else. Speaking of it, and we kind of wanted to, this is kind of why we wanted to do this tonight, a chance to all the baseball fans to kind of hear our stories. So I'll start with you, Ryan. How did you become a Ranger fan? And were the Rangers, are they your only baseball team?
It's always been Rangers. I've probably been to more Ranger games than every other sporting event, despite the level, whether it's high school football, college football, collegiate baseball, any other sport, any other level combined. I've probably been to more Ranger games than the rest of it combined. They've always been my team. I think my parents took me to my first game when I was 2, so I remember that one fondly. And it was growing up, going to the Temple, man, Globe Life Park. Growing up, whenever I was 9 or 10, my guys was that first World Series core, the guys like Josh Hamilton, Ian Kinsler, and Elvis Andrus, Beltray. Then on the pitching side, Colby Lewis, the Cobra, man, C.J. Wilson, and Benji Molina catching too. Those are my guys, man. Whenever I was a kid, those are the guys I remember. And I even have some memories from whenever I was like 6 and 7, like Jared Saltalamacchia, and that's about the time that David Murphy came in, and then Michael Young was my favorite player growing up. Then Beltray came in 2011. So I have so many fond memories I've always been a Rangers fan. When they won the World Series last year, it's the first and only time I've ever cried while watching a sporting event. I was so happy because I'd seen pretty much my entire life just them coming up short in more ways than one, and just seeing all that heartbreak finally culminate in that championship. It was the best thing ever for me. So,
well, when the Rangers won the World Series, Noe took off his Astro hat and put on his Ranger hat and celebrated with us.
That is so much cap. Get out of here.
Do you remember, Noe, the day that they signed Adrian Beltre? I messaged you and I said something like, meet the Hall of Fame third baseman for the Texas Rangers. You remember that? And you were like, well, we got to see. He's got a lot of work to do if he's going to be a Hall of Fame third baseman. And I'm like, nope. He's going to be a third baseman, Hall of Famer. I got
that actually could have happened. I don't believe that text message ever happened. But
yeah, it really did. Because
I'm going to go ahead and say that's a lie. But I'm going to go ahead and also say that think about Adrian Beltre. He was an MVP candidate with the Dodgers in 2003, 2004. Took money to go to the Mariners. Had good seasons.
But not what people thought he was going to have.
Not what people thought he was going to have. Had 1 year with Boston, kind of wrote some of the wrongs he had with the Mariners, and then he came to Texas after 1 season with Boston and became the Hall of Famer we all know and love. So I say that to say that I don't believe that text message ever occurred between you and me, because at that time, I thought he would have been a solid contributor to the Texas team that was on the ascent, but nowhere did I ever think he was going to be a Hall of Famer.
That's literally that's kind of the discussions how we had it actually.
In 2015, especially when he kind of carried the team on his back, especially in the second half of that season, to get to 88, 90 wins, win the division, come back over the Astros, to get to the division title. Win that, or no, go up 2-0 against the Blue Jays in that series. Like that whole stretch of games. Yeah. Then I saw in 2015, that's when I saw him as a Hall of Famer. I never thought he was a Hall of Famer up until that point.
Whenever he was going on that stretch of he was almost at 3,000 games, I went to the game the night before. So he went into that game with 2,997 hits. Then I went to this one saying, come on, this has got to be it. Then, of course, he went 2 for 4. And then in his very, very first at-bat the next afternoon, he got it. So, but it was cool because at that time, of course, the Rangers hadn't, they were kind of lowly at that point, and it was the most full I'd ever seen the Temple, Globe Life Park, since probably whenever I would go in 2010 and 2011, 2012. And when I was a kid, and I was probably like, I think 17 or 18 when he hit 3,000. So it had been a while since I'd seen a crowd like that, and it was pretty awesome. But the thing I was that close from seeing 3,000, it still irks me to this day.
Well, Terry will tell you, but to me to an extent, it's very hard up until recently to sell out our old Arlington Stadium, the Temple, as you say, Globe Life, and then the current stadium. It's just. We were the old Washington Senators. We were not an original team. It was not like Dallas was, Dallas in general was not the most popular city in DFW back in the 40s and 50s. It took until about the 60s for it to start coming in. The Cowboys helped with that, and then like the 70s and 80s, TV shows started being based around Dallas. So this was not the most popular area, so to speak, but it started to become more of a baseball town probably around the time you started going to games and watching games. So you kind of have a blessing of seeing it around some of the better times.
Okay, so yes and no about the attendance. Now, again, somebody's going to point out actual attendance dates. There would be years that the Rangers drew shitty, but the Rangers So I think a lot of people don't realize that the 70s, and I mean decade, not 1970, the 70s Rangers had some really damn good teams.
Yeah.
You had, of course, the Billy Martin year and a half, and they finished second. But like those late 70s teams, they were really good teams that if you put them in today's playoff format, they might have went to a World Series or two. They just had the unfortunate of it being the two divisions, and you had Kansas City at the top back then, who was just it's funny to think of that, but Kansas City was a true baseball power for 10
George
years.
Brett.
Yeah, from 75 to 87, the Royals, and not every year, but they were consistently really good. And so you had some really good teams in the late 70s. And then the 80s, like the mid 80s on, now from 82 to about 87, it was terrible. But like 88 on, the Rangers were a fun summer thing to do. So they actually drew a lot. They would draw 2 million in a year back when that was still kind of a not a lot of teams did that because they were fun. And
that's by the time Nolan Ryan came back was 88 or 89.
Yeah, 88 and 89. And then, then they parlayed that into the ballpark in Arlington. And then, of course, they from about 85 to 2000, you always at least thought, well, the Rangers might lose, but they're going to win 8-6 or lose 8-6. It's going to be fun no matter what. But I don't know how much of a baseball like true baseball, people got mad when Josh Hamilton made that comment, but I don't think he's wrong. I don't think the average IQ of the average Ranger fan is up there with, say, like a St. Louis or New York, but I don't think it's low. I just don't. I think there's some baseball towns that are just really special. Like St. Louis knows their baseball. And it's fun to see their fans know that. I don't think like the Rangers at the low end of it, but I don't think the Rangers are the most baseball savvy. The Dallas-Fort Worth area likes winners. We go to winners. That's just how, and that's every area. That's not just Dallas, but Dallas specifically. Like, look at the Stars right now. You went to a game. The seats, it might not be 100% full, but it's a very well attended sport. 5 years ago when they were terrible, the Stars you could easily get. You could get upper level chef cooking level. I can't remember what they call that, for $30 at a night. I know, because I did it once. And so it's just, it's all about if you win here.
Aaron, Cardinal and Ranger fan, got that 2011 World Series must have been fun for you then.
How do you see? I don't know if I'd ever, I don't have two teams that I root for the same level in a sport. I don't know if I'd ever want them to play each other, because that's just weird. Like, I don't know how if you truly like both, I don't know how you celebrate. Like, I don't know how it would have been. He says couldn't lose. I don't know, man. Like, I don't see how you celebrate the way it happened. At some point, you had to pick an allegiance there. At some point, one of the teams, and that's fine. I'm not saying like a bad thing, but at one point, you were rooting for one of those teams more than you were the other, in my opinion. I don't know, Noe, you're like that with the Eagles and the Cowboys. So who do you actually root for when the Cowboys and Eagles play? Do you fly, Eagle fly? Is that what you do?
Oh, you son of a gun. And I'm being very PG with that comment. How dare you? How dare you?
How dare you, sir? Hey, I admitted I rooted for Washington in the Super Bowl once.
Well, yeah, because your mom was
probably rooted for them twice. I think I probably rooted for them in '91 too when they beat the Bills. The only time I didn't root for them was against the Raiders, because it was the Raiders.
Yeah,
that '91 Redskin team was probably considered the one of the top 5 greatest teams of all time. It was the perfect storm, like a lot of one-year great teams. It was a perfect storm of veterans and a quarterback that was actually hot, with a solid offensive line that only allowed him to get sacked 7 times. I think for the whole season, the team only allowed 9 sacks.
I think it was 9 sacks. Which
is a ridiculous stat that people don't talk about to this day.
That team is not talked about enough, Noe, because it was it's funny to say it was a 1-year window. That the Redskins, the former Redskins had been, they had been a contender the whole decade through the 80s with a down here, down there. But that 91 team, that felt like the culmination of all that finally came together. And you're right. I don't think enough people, when you talk about, maybe that's one of our off-season series, the top 5 greatest teams of all time. I think the 91 Washington team is way up there, a lot higher than a lot of people would have them.
I mean, they're easily top 5 to me.
I think the 91 Redskins are better than the 85 Bears.
Wow.
Oh, that's a hot take. You know, they were 14-2, and I think they were 14-1 going into their last game. They really did.
They had a throwaway game.
So, I mean, yeah, maybe. That's for another, time. Speaking of which, though, speaking of look backs, though, like, 94 Major League Baseball season.
Yeah.
We were talking about this. I think we should really talk about that season in depth at some point.
I think we could do a mini look back, maybe one of these shows where instead of we're doing like tonight and just kind of bouncing around baseball and other sports, where we just talk 94 season. And because I have a lot of feelings about that 94 season, being the first year of the ballpark in Arlington. You do too. Ryan wasn't born yet.
I remember it fondly. Yes.
He was born
live.
Ryan was born in 2013. So, he's, that was my first year living up in Dallas. Went to a ton of games because it was $5 to sit out in the outfield in great seats, and you could bring your own food in.
Wow.
And so we would go and get Subway right next door and get Subway. And this was, back when you could get 2 footlongs for like $5. And I mean, $25 to go watch a major league game. That was cheaper in 94 than going to a movie. In 94, movies weren't even that expensive, but by the time you bought food and all that. So yeah, went to a ton of those games. I always want the Rangers to raise a banner for 94. Because technically they were winning the division when the season ended, even though they were like 10 games under 500. But I think the biggest talk we'll have is Montreal. I think that will always be – that might be the biggest what if in sports history.
And as someone that watched it live going during the season, it was really sad to me. Now, like 30 years later, looking back, it's a very sad – story to me, considering all the talent that was on that 94 Expos team. And just Matt Williams, he was on a pace to thrash Roger Maris's record. And he probably would have still had the home run record to this day. He was on a pace to get close to 80 home runs that season. It was a ridiculous season. And the 49ers, the San Francisco Giants, they were doing not so good record-wise. Now, in the prior year, they had a great record, but they were just not. They were not as good of a team that season. But yeah, I could talk for hours on that for sure. So if we ever decide to do it,
I think we should.
I think so too.
But a segue, because you had asked about like what made us fans. The Rangers. One of y'all had brought up Nolan Ryan. And that was it for me. The Nolan Ryan, Robin Ventura fight.
My uncle was at that game.
Oh, that's fantastic. That was the game. The White Sox had a great season that year.
Yeah.
So it kind of made it even more important to me. I remember I loved Blackjack McDowell. I loved Frank Thomas.
Racist.
That was his nickname.
I love Jack McDowell. He was fun to watch.
Blackjack McDowell.
And he was one of the baseball players that he was cooler than the sport, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
He got on to like Arsenio and stuff because he played, I think he played bass or guitar. I can't remember.
Aaron just made the best point of all time. Tony Gwynn. I'm not even looking this up. In my head, I think I remember him having a 394 batting average.
394, 396.
When they canceled that season.
Yeah, 394, 396. I don't think Williams would have done the home run record. I'm not sure about Gwynn. That 396, the more you get deeper into the season, it's one of those that one bad day almost negates 3 good days.
Yeah, like
My
an 0
dad
for 4
my
day.
dad
Yeah.
brings up
I
a
get, I
good
get it.
point.
I get it.
Me and Dad growing up, where we grew up, we didn't get the Rangers all the time, and we had to go sit out in the pasture to listen to the Ranger games, just so we could catch them, so we could hear Mitch Williams blowing one, and in the bullpen.
Oh, dude. 94 season, the first year in the Temple. I'm just gonna call it the Temple now. That's just
That's what it
funny.
is.
Yeah.
The
That's what
Kenny
we
Rogers
started. Did you
perfect
not know
game.
that was 95, wasn't it?
No, it was 94. It
Was
was the
it
Jeff
94?
Wright, the big
95
Jeff
was the
Wright.
All-Star game, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
95 was
that's
the Jeff
All-Star game.
Conine All-Star MVP game.
Yeah.
So 94, Kenny Rogers perfect game, the Jeff Wright catch. I've had several stories from different friends.
You mean the Rusty Greer catch?
Oh yeah, the rest of your catch.
Yeah,
Oh,
you said-
during
You said
the-
Jeff
The
Wright.
perfect game by Kenny
Yeah.
Rogers. Yes,
Mhm.
my bad. Yeah, I've had several stories of people saying, "Oh yeah, I missed that game by 1 game," or "I had tickets to that game, but I couldn't make it because of whatever reason."
That was me. My ex-wife, her brother Sean was up. He was still in, like, I think he was like 8th grade or 9th grade. And we wanted to take him to a Ranger game. And so we just said, what day do you want to go? Because he stayed like a week with us. And just what day you want to go? And he just randomly picked the day after. If he'd have randomly picked that one, we'd have been at that game.
Yeah, I actually been to a crusty Rusty Greer appreciation day. So yeah, it's that is a very fond memory of mine, that Kenny Rogers perfect game, because I actually did watch the last 2 innings of that game.
Yeah, that was special because it came out of nowhere.
Again, this is the Rangers team that was 10, 11 games under 500, but still leading the AL West.
Mm-hmm.
But now I do want to bring up that they were, and I don't know if they'd have actually won. That'd have been interesting to see. But this was a Ranger team that a lot of those guys ended up being some of the guys that were on the division winning teams.
Yeah.
Yeah, they weren't great, but it wasn't like they were terrible, and they would have been interesting in the playoffs. So I want to give you, let's go ahead and do a little mini to finish up tonight. Let's do a mini 94, because here's the teams that led the 6 divisions. You had the Yankees, and I can't remember what day the actual strike was, August 10th or something like that. But the Yankees was 70-43, and they were 6.5 games over the Orioles. In the Central, you had the White Sox, who were a game ahead of the Indians.
And the Royals were really good that season too.
Yeah, let's say the Royals were only 4 games back.
Hal McRae and Brian McKay as manager.
Yep, the son and father-son manager combination. In the West, you had the Rangers. They were only 1 game ahead of Oakland. Both of them were with 52-62 and 51-63. In the East, you had the Expos, 6 games above the Braves. In the Central, you had Cincinnati and the Astros in a virtual tie. Great and then team. In the West, you had the Dodgers. For all the talk about the AL West, the NL West was almost the exact same. The Dodgers led, but they were only 58-56. And the second place team was, as you said, the Giants, and they were 55-60. So now we do have a little bit of revisionist history in the idea of Montreal was only 6 games ahead of the Braves, a team that was very much World Series playoff tested. I think we all think, oh yeah, the Expos would have won. The Expos weren't even guaranteed to win their division, but the rest
they had Moises Alou, Larry Walker, and Pedro Martinez. They were Andres Galarraga. No, wait, he may have been with the Colorado Rockies.
Yeah, I think he'd already went to Colorado, because I think he went to Colorado at the first.
Marquise Grissom. They had a stacked lineup. I guarantee you they would have won the World Series in '94. The Yankees were on their way. And I know the Reds were pretty good at this point. And the NL West wasn't really that good at that point.
I'm just saying the Braves were still the Braves, man.
The Braves, yeah, because they had Glavine, they had Smoltz, they had Maddox, obviously the ace. They had 3 great starting pitchers. Avery was kind of on his way out at this point. Kent Merker, I think, was the next pitcher in there. The Braves are always going to be the Braves in the 90s. They were always going to be in the discussion. The Phillies, they had their moment in 93. I was a little child back then. That Boy Meets World just came out. They kind of piggybacked off the Phillies making the World Series in 93 with Darren Dalton and Lenny Dykstra, Kurt Schilling, and all that.
That was a fun team to watch, man.
And it was kind of fun because, like, I would watch that episode and then I'd flip back over to the World Series because that was a great 6-game World Series, Toronto and Philadelphia. That was just fantastic. And it wasn't 7 games. It could have been 5 games. It could have been the 2000 New York Yankees and New York Mets. That Subway Series, that was a great 5-game series. Even though the Yankees won, it was just all close games. That Toronto-Philadelphia series, that was really good. Now, that had one of the greatest moments of all time where it ended on game-winning home run, because that kind of harkens back to, American childhood dreams of
that was the Joe Carter home run, right?
The Joe Carter home run to end the World Series over Mitch Williams.
It wasn't as good as the Mazeroski one, because that one actually decided, like, that was a game that was in doubt. But the Joe Carter one, that's definitely
ends a season. You can't pass. I mean, Bill Mazeroski, 60 Pirates. Yeah, that was
ended everything right then and there.
Mazeroski and Carter. Hey, that is 1 and 2.
If my dad is still listening, hey Dad, what are your thoughts on Bill Mazeroski? My dad grew up a Yankee fan, because back then in Texas you didn't have anybody. Back in the 1800s, after my dad had fought in the Civil War, he had to follow baseball, and you only got the Yankees on the radio. The Yankees and the Cardinals were the only 2 teams you got, but he was a big Yankee fan. In fact, I watched 61 yesterday while I worked. Have y'all ever watched that?
Your dad was my favorite character in Roadhouse. Come on, dude.
He's not Matt. He's not Sam Elliott. I keep trying to tell you that. Have either one of y'all watched 61?
Yeah, I've watched 61.
No, I haven't.
You haven't watched 61?
You need to watch 61.
Do you have HBO Max?
I do.
Right now, he won't talk about Mazeroski. Mazeroski. That's right there. The epitome of sports. My dad is 113 years old, and yet he can still remember how he felt when he was a young man and Bill Mazeroski, beat his Yankees. Go watch it tonight, Ryan. Like, if you love baseball, that's my homework. It's a love letter. Billy Crystal directed it and put it together. There is some cheesy CGI, but you just get past that. It's fine. And it's little things like it's how they made the stadium look as good as they do, as they use CGI to make it look bigger. But just the day-to-day of Roger Maris and Mickey Mantle and what they went through during the home run chase. Yeah, it's homework. Like we might have to do that as a bad movies and a drink show.
2 different personalities going after the same record. It is definitely great.
And then another baseball movie with numbers in it, 42. Like we mentioned 42. Before, it's Jackie Robinson Day.
R.I.P.
Yeah, because of Chadwick Boseman, and Noe knows this. We talked about this before. 42 is one of my favorite baseball movies.
Yeah, me too.
And until Boseman passed, I watched that every year. It's hard to watch now. It's hard to watch Draft Day now, and it's sad because Chadwick Boseman was in 2 of our favorite sports movies.
Yeah, and in
the last 10 years.
I like all those Marvel Cinematic Universe movies too, and he's Black Panther. It's hard for me to watch those now.
Yeah,
it's crazy because he kept that that battle with cancer so private. I don't know how he kept it out of the public eye for so long. Like, no one really knew he was battling it until right up to Willie passed away.
I mean, literally the day he died, a lot of people didn't know. I can't remember if I told Noe or Noe told me. I just remember being just like having to refresh and reread and research. Like, this can't be real.
Yeah, I remember your reaction to it.
Yeah,
but I don't remember if I sent it to you first or you sent it to me first.
Yeah, but I think his performance as Jackie Robinson in 42 might have been his best in his career. He did a phenomenal job.
I don't know. I need to introduce you to Vontae Mack, outside linebacker.
If you never watched Draft Day, you need to watch Draft Day. That is a really
I have not seen Draft Day either. I know.
Okay. By the way, I just want to announce everybody we're looking for a new host for Texas Two Seam. We need somebody that knows movies. No, yeah. Look, so draft day. 42 is a work of art.
Yes.
Draft day is a work of art that you need with a drink or two to make it work. But it's such a fun football movie. Like it really is.
Yeah.
The scenarios are ridiculous,
but then almost happened for the Browns in real life. Oh, my dad's talking about the Yankees. I'm assuming he means with Whitey Ford and all the cheating that they used to do back then.
The 50s Yankees were really good. Yes.
50s and early 60s Yankees.
Yeah.
That's my favorite. Okay, Ryan, have you watched Ken Burns baseball?
Yes, I have seen
that. Is a yearly ritual for Terry. So.
I've actually watched it 3 times in the last 6 months.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Well, probably
I know you watch it every year.
Yeah, I watch it every year at least once.
It is required watching for anyone that ever wants to watch, ever is a fan of baseball.
Yeah.
I really went. He went back in the early 2000s and did an extra innings for a couple of, like, I really wish he would do it at least one more time, especially because if you want to be honest, in the last 100 years of baseball, the last 3 have been the most transformative. Like, you have National League now, they bat with a DH. You have the pitch clock. You have the ghost runner on second during the regular season. So to me, this would be a great time to talk with some of the older guys and hear them complain about how baseball is different, but that's what they'll do. But yeah, I watch, and my favorite part of Ken Burns' baseball, it is when it's in, because remember he does his shows by innings. It's inning 3 through 5 or 4 through 6, where it's just about the 50s and the 60s. Yeah. To live in New York in the 50s with baseball, with the Dodgers, the Yankees, the Giants, that had to be just absolutely magical to have 3 not only good teams, but good teams all within an hour's drive of each other. Oh man, that must have been awesome.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Well, while we're on the subject of baseball documentaries and movies, do y'all have a favorite baseball movie of all time? What's number 1 for y'all?
I still think Bull Durham.
That's a good one. Noe?
A League of Their Own, I guess.
I love A League of Their Own. That's a great one.
To be different. I probably would say Bull Durham, but I mean, I kind of want to throw that out just to, make people remember that.
Well, I mean, we can talk about we don't talk about just our favorite. I love A League of Their Own. I haven't watched the series. I'm going to eventually. I think
The Rookie and Angels in the Outfield are also ones I like. As a kid, I remember those movies a lot.
I like The Rookie. I actually watched that recently, and it's goofy. I never got into Angels in the Outfield. It just wasn't. I thought that was a little too goofy. I love, like I said, Major League, of course. Major League. I would like for them to. They talked about their not redoing it, but a new Major League. Yeah. I'd love to see that. I think that could be fun. I don't like A Field of Dreams. I'm not gonna say I don't like it. I'm not gonna say I don't like it. I think it's overrated.
Oh man. I
don't like the Babe Ruth movie with John Goodman. That's terrible.
Yeah.
A recommended movie is the Stratton Story that has James Stewart in it, one of my favorite actors of all time.
I haven't seen that one.
And then with Major League, one of the characters in there, the old school knuckleballer, Ed Harris. When I look at him, I kind of think of Charlie Huff, former Rangers pitcher. Do you think that was kind of the inspiration for Eddie Harris? Might have been Charlie Huff.
No, Gaylord Perry was.
That also
Gaylord Perry was. He wasn't. Harris wasn't a knuckleballer. He was a junk baller.
Oh yeah.
And remember, he even says one of my favorite lines is he says something about whenever the umps are looking, I'll just rub my nose and put a little snot. And Charlie Sheen's character goes, "You put snot on the baseball." And I love Eddie Harris says, "I don't have the arm like you. One day you will too."
Yeah, and
that was straight off of Gaylord Perry.
And one of my other favorite lines was also from Ed Harris. It was like, "You're trying to say Jesus Christ can't hit a curveball?" That kills me.
Or no, whenever they're on that, she puts them on the old World War II plane. What's his name what's his name's praying, and Harris sees that and goes, "Oh, now you turn to him." Yeah, Major League has some of the best. I love Bull Durham, of course, with Kevin Costner, but I love the inside look of minor league. Hey, I'll tell you another one that Kevin Costner did that a lot of people don't like. That's For the Love of the Game.
Oh, that was a great movie.
Brilliant game.
And what was the one with Brad Pitt where he's like the manager of the A or like the
Moneyball?
Moneyball. Yeah.
Love that movie too.
Okay, so Moneyball is a great movie, and it's about baseball, but there's
not much baseball in it.
It's not a baseball movie.
Yeah.
The funniest part is the Ron Washington character when they're talking to Chris Pratt and Chris, they're asking him to move, and Brad Pitt's like, first base ain't hard, right, Ron? And Ron goes, "It's very hard." Man, baseball movies are so hard. Sports movies in general are so hard to do. There's such a thin line between. Like, I don't like Rudy. I think Rudy is vastly overrated. I think Rudy is annoying. First off, the whole story is not even true. I love Bad News Bears. Original Bad News Bears.
I've only seen the original once, but I grew up with the 2005 one with Billy Bob Thornton. So in my young mind, whenever I think of Bad News Bears, I instantly think of that one.
That's a good. The 05 one's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
The Walter Matthau though had the 70s where they could do things that you can't. And I'll tell you one that's really good. I can't think of the name of it. It's the Keanu Reeves one where he's having to teach the inner city kids about baseball. Let me look that up.
Oh my gosh.
I'm going to go ahead and spoil it here. It's a really cute movie. It really, it's the typical feel good, a little bit of white savior, the rich white guy who got in trouble with the law. He helps these kids and he makes them winners and all that. I'm trying to think of the name of this here. I'm trying to find it. The Lake at Golly, where's it at? But anyway, the problem with the movie, Hardball, 2001.
Oh, yeah.
So the problem with it, though, is at the very end, after they've won their championship and life is good, one of the little kids gets shot in a drive-by. And it's so just tacked on like, oh, yeah, we won. But this kid got killed, by the way. And it was just so like, wow, that's just a little rough. But, yeah, the original Bad News Bears, I absolutely love. I'm trying to think of other ones that maybe people don't know.
Yeah. I was going to say it's a generic one, but growing up as a kid, I watched it all the time with my dad, the original Sandlot.
Sandlot's a class. Yes, Sandlot.
It's a class. I've seen that very one more times than I could count.
Very rewatchable.
Yes.
Yeah, it's probably tied with Major League for my favorite baseball movie.
That's one of those that movie is so good.
Yeah.
I don't even think of it as a baseball movie as much as a coming to life, that type thing.
Coming of age,
and for me, growing up in the 80s in a small town, that was, even though that's in the 50s, that's a lot of how my life was in the summer. I had a group of friends that I rode bikes with, and we played baseball out in fact, my parents, because we played baseball and my dad was always coach. My dad actually, we built a practice field. I live out in the country, pasture. We built a real practice field out in the country with a backstop and everything. But even before then, like we rode bikes, we swam at pools. We didn't have a city pool, but we swam at friends' pools. We did the baseball cards. All of that resonates, and I think I know people that were kids today. I live in a neighborhood where in the summer I have a little church that has a ballpark. In the summer, there's kids playing. Kids still play today like we did. They also just stay inside more because they have technology and stuff. But yeah, Sandlot to me that's just a great iconic movie. My dad says The Rookie. I'm not a big. Wait, are we talking about The Rookie or Rookie of the Year?
I think The Rookie. That's the one about
Dennis Quaid.
Yeah, he made his major league debut. He was a high school coach.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I've seen that one. I like that one. And it's
a little long. It's like a 2-hour movie.
Yeah. I mean, but I enjoyed it, but it's not one of my favorites.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. I didn't even realize that the other movie Dad's talking about has Dennis Quaid in it as well. I haven't seen this one. It's 2023 about a kid that in a small town in Texas, he overcomes degenerative spinal disease, and plays baseball. Blah blah blah. I have to check it out. Dennis Quaid, another one. People forget about how many sports movies he used to be in. Um, unpopular opinion from Aaron Jackson.
That was a great movie.
I love The Natural,
I
but
do
I feel
too.
I feel the way he feels. That's how I feel about Field of Dreams. I
Isn't
think
that
Field of
where
Dreams
the Rangers home run song
yes.
at the stadium? That's from The Natural, right?
Well, everybody did that for
Yeah.
20 years. The Rangers just
Yeah.
held on to it really long.
Yeah.
But yeah, for me, it's Field of Dreams. I've never understood why
Love
Field of
that
Dreams.
movie too.
That's one of my dad's favorites, and I love it too. That's probably top 5 for me.
It's an
Yeah.
A's movie, Terry. We
Yeah.
can do. Is it a bad movie or is it an A's movie, Terry? Come on.
What? Field of Dreams?
Field of Dreams, yeah.
No, I don't think Field of Dreams is even 80s movie. It's a timeless movie. I
Yeah.
get why people like it. I just don't. I just think it's very schmaltzy. I don't know. Just very I don't know. It's just weird. I'll have to find it. I actually listened to somebody the other day, kind of gave a funny recap of it, and they didn't like the movie. And it was I'll have to send that to y'all because it's really really funny. But yeah, that's the thing. Our sports movies, we're in a really pessimistic, cynical part of just life. Just this generation right now is just very cynical. And Noah and I've talked about it, bleeds over into sports. Like now everybody only talks about things like winning. That you don't even appreciate just good teams. I don't know if this generation can appreciate a good over the top Cinderella type movie story anymore. I think people want too much realism.
Not me. I'm a big. I like older movies like that with over the top stuff, like the original.
Yeah,
Oh,
well,
go ahead.
Ryan just proved that there's a market for it. So yeah,
There is.
sure.
It's very small, population 1, but it's there.
Oh yeah,
maybe there's more. I don't know.
Could be.
Fear Strikes Out. I totally forgot about that. Yeah, I love Tim Cup. We'll talk about that here in a second. So Fear Strikes Back is Anthony Perkins is the lead, and like his dad is like this really big, like obsessed baseball fan, and kind of not quite Todd Marinevich him, but he pushes him through baseball, and like he lives through that. It's a good old 50s movie. Tin Cup, great movie. I love Tin Cup. Again, Kevin Costner in sports movies, but Tin Cup's really funny. To me, I kind of agree that might be the all-around best Kevin Costner. We could do a look back at Kevin Costner sports movies.
Now he's transitioning over to Western movies now too. With
Yes,
the Yellowstone, he's got a 2-parter set in the 1800s. It's all in theaters. It's 2 movies in 2 parts. I think the first one releases like in June or something.
yeah, Home on the Range or something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
But yeah, it's funny. Again, we don't really have anybody now. I mean, honestly, Chadwick was the last guy that I can think of that starred in multiple sports movies.
Mm-hmm.
I have to head out.
Okay.
But great show.
Yeah.
Y'all
Have a good one, sir.
keep it going.
We'll see you Friday again. Outdrink the coverage. A look back.
Yep.
We're going to be doing honorable mention, 1 episode, and the number 4 rival for the Cowboys. Spoiler alert: it's Green Bay. And we have a Patreon, but we forgot to key it in, so we'll have that next week, or we'll start showing that next Friday as well. But have a good night, Mr. Intern Pro Noe.
Thank you.
I'm sorry you hate celebrating Jackie Robinson as much as I do.
Thank you for the invite, Ryan.
Yes, sir.
Terry, I'll see you Friday.
All right, brother.
Happy Jackie Robinson Day to all y'all.
Happy Jack a what?
Jackie Robinson.
Oh, okay. I thought you said jacket to Robinson.
Oh my God. Good night.
Good night, sir. But all right, we'll finish back out if you want. Let's kind of recap tonight's MLB.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, of course the Rangers again getting the 1-0 win on the road against Detroit. Again, Michael Lorenzen, his first start as a Ranger, pitching a scoreless outing. I think he had like 5 or 6 strikeouts as well. And then across the American League, the Orioles, they win 7-4 over the Twins. taking a look at that Astros Braves score, because again, the Rangers will be going to Atlanta following this series against Detroit. It's the top of the seventh. The Braves are still leading 2-1. And then any other scores that stand out to you, Terry?
Yeah, I'll just go and shoot through. I mean, of course, it's Monday. It's short day. Bottom of the eighth, you got the Padres beating the Brewers 7-3. As you talked about, the Braves beating the Astros 2-1. The Cubs are up over the Diamondback 1-0.
Mhm.
Cubs have had a nice start to their season.
Yes.
Cardinals are over the Athletics 1-0. Reds are losing to Seattle 3-0.
That's in the first inning too. Wow.
Yeah, first inning, and Seattle has struggled to hit. And Seattle, they're one of those that's benefiting the most right now from the Rangers and Astros starting slow, because the Mariners really needed to start strong. I felt, because I really thought, I kind of thought both the Rangers and the Astros would shoot out of the gate pretty well. And the Rangers have still, for the most part. Again, 9-8, it's perfectly fine at this point. That's just how it is. But the Mariners, like, for them to be 6-10 and still be relatively right up there, I think that's good. Top of the first, Dodgers number 0-0. Game's already completed. Of course, you talked about the Rangers. Cleveland beat Boston 6-0. Orioles won. Phillies beat the Rockies. Giants beat the Marlins. Man, the Marlins, like, I know their playoff run last year was more of things broke right.
Yeah.
And again, long season, 17 games in, but still to be 3-14, and then you're losing games like tonight where they were up by 3 runs in the seventh and end up losing. Last night or 2 nights ago, they were up by 2 runs in the ninth and ended up losing. It's crazy how bad they've started.
Yeah, and then on the American League side of things, like we talked about earlier about the White Sox, they're 2-14. Then you got the Rockies, they're 4-12. Just a couple teams that were at least had some promise, because at least
the White Sox did. We all knew the White Sox were going to be terrible.
Yeah, aside from that,
shot their wad 2 years ago. But yeah, I mean,
but I think the Rockies have had their share of injury woes so far as well. I think they just lost Chris Bryant.
Yeah.
Who, I mean, he hurt his back, and he hurt his back last year as well. So who knows how long that's going to linger with him. He's probably on the latter half, going the downhill end of his career as well. I mean, I'm still kind of surprised that, again, you get to this major league level to make money, and the Rockies offered him a very big contract. But, I mean, he was still in his 30s at that point. When you're heading towards your last leg, I know it's a lot of money, but you still want to be on a contender on the latter end of your career, don't you?
He's 32.
Yeah.
We're talking about Bryant, right? I want to make sure.
Yeah, Chris Bryant. Bryant. Yeah.
He's 32. And in today's world, I mean, if you want to play to your 38, 39, you can easily. But I think the biggest thing I can take away from covering pro sports and talking to people that play pro sports, and it's that Anthony Rendon thing. He got raked over the coals.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, this is a job. And yeah, championships are great. And some people, their financial life in general allows them to be like, hey, I can make $1 million and be great. And then some are like, I want to make, I'm going to work for 30 years and I'm going to make enough money that 5 generations from now, my family doesn't have to worry about money. Chris Bryant's one of those that he got his World Series. So sometimes
that's a good point.
That might be enough. And also, he could have you also have that, I'll go to this team and we can build something. And he's from Las Vegas, it's in the same, I don't know. I think that's one thing the biggest thing I've done now that I don't do anymore is now I think of things that it's not just about wins and losses. Players are playing to win, but at the end of the day, they're also feeding their family. And I know he said, yeah, but they make millions. Yeah, that's right. But that also doesn't mean they should leave millions on the table just because they make millions.
Yeah, that's a good point.
We have a weird, I don't like sports. This was thing owners did. This was a court case way back in the day. I don't like salaries being known. I don't think that was done by owners to create an a fissure between players and fans. When people say things like, well, the fans and the players, they don't relate to the fans because of how much they get paid. Well, if we didn't know how much they get paid, we'd still feel they relate. And so that's just, that's one of those topics for ownership versus players, which, by the way, the baseball world, they're the worst at. Again, watching Ken Burns' baseball, and you go back to the 94, and we didn't even really talk about just the absurdity of not finishing a season because you can't figure out, even in the moment. And it's so funny to hear both sides admit like how much they hated each other. Like in the moment, you couldn't be like, hey, guys, let's figure this out in the off season. We will come to the table. We will sit down. We'll figure everything out. But they wouldn't even do that. That just tells you neither side at the end of the day really care about the fans.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. And okay, this is another thing too I wanted to talk about. So in that Rangers series against Houston, on that
one,
this past one that they just got out of, I mean, this is a different topic, but the umpiring, Angel Hernandez, he's been scrutinized for a long time.
He's terrible.
Something that I wanted to talk about. It was in particular that one at bat, Wyatt Langford, where all three pitches were 6 inches or more. The strike 3 call was almost 7 inches outside. It was in the other batter's box. It is ever since they started keeping up with it with like the tracks, they have on TV, they have the strike zone boxes and stuff. It's the furthest outside strike call ever since they started doing that. And it was just absolutely ridiculous. I mean, and there's been that talk about bringing in robot umpires. What's your stance on that?
If they do the job, I'm perfectly fine with that.
Yeah, I am too.
If we were earlier in the show, I would send you the video so you could show, but we're wrapping things up. But just go look for it on YouTube. I want whatever works best. I don't care. I'm fine with human mistakes. But when you have an umpire like Angel Hernandez, who is blatantly terrible, and I want to give the dude credit. He was smart. He sued MLB 10 years ago, realizing that even if he lost the case, there is no way baseball is going to fire him in any time soon, because that's immediately what everybody will go to.
And the umpires union is super strong as well.
Yes, and they should be. I'm all for you. I'm saying I'm 100% a union guy.
Me too.
But there are times when the union of anything, whatever the job may be, there comes a time when even the union needs to say, okay, we can't defend you anymore. And Angel Hernandez is one of those specifically that I point out to. He is not a good interview. Real quick, Aaron Jackson, Jim Sundberg will be recorded when, Ryan?
I'll be recording with Jim Sundberg, Rangers Hall of Famer, part of that inaugural class with Charlie Huff, Nolan Ryan, and Johnny Oates. I'll be recording with him tomorrow morning, and then the interview will be up on Wednesday.
Okay.
It'll be up on Wednesday morning. It'll be up on the L4 Media YouTube channel and all of our podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. The interview with Jim Sundberg will be recorded on Tuesday morning and posted this coming Wednesday. And then you have an interview coming up with Jeff Fry as well. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm supposed to reach out to him at the end of this week, and we're going to figure it out over the next couple weeks. It's a little bit different interview because we're actually going to be touching on his beliefs. He's very opinionated about the pitch clock. He's very opinionated. He's very old school, and I think that's the fun part of it because, again, I get it. You played it a certain way, but you got to adjust. You got to always, at the end of the day, wins and losses and quality baseball is great, but it's all entertaining. If it's not entertaining, it doesn't matter how good the sport is. You've got to fix that. But yeah, I'll have updates on that. Let's talk about this though. I think this would be a good place. I think we're winding down here.
Yeah.
Jim Sundberg. Should he be a Hall of Famer?
Yeah. Oh, should he be in the Pro Hall?
Yes. Should he be in a Pro Hall of Fame?
I think so. He on average has the most caught games per year with 140 per year. And he has the American League record for most games caught in a season at 155. Yep. I don't think that's ever going to be topped. At least, with how it could be. I'm not saying it won't ever, but it's very unlikely because they give a lot of guys days off and injuries can happen. It's just a very unlikely record to be broken. Now, is it impossible to break? Only missing 7 games for an entire season? It's not impossible, but I think it's very highly
People aren't
unlikely.
used that way anymore at catcher.
Yeah.
He was all right. So he played in his career. He played from 1974 to 1989.
89. Yeah, 15 years.
He was a 3-time All-Star.
Mm-hmm.
He was a 6-time Gold Glove winner.
And
Now,
he won that 6 years in a row too.
yes, and also the All-Star. We're talking in an era where you had some of the greatest American League catchers, like Thurman Munson, like Carlton Fisk. Them two alone, that was a logjam that he was having to go to, and they were on teams that were great. You know, the Red Sox of the 70s were great. The Yankees, you know, of course, Thurman Munson lost his life in 79. We didn't get to see the rest of his career, but he was definitely headed towards a Hall of Fame. And so to me, it's one of those where you go, oh, only 3-time All-Stars. You have to understand how it was with that and where you were going to get in. The 6-time Gold Gloves, he won a World Series with the Royals. He was very instrumental in that World Series win. It wasn't like he just got traded and sat on the bench.
Yeah.
And as my dad said, he's one of the best Ranger announcers back when him and Steve Busby.
And he was a front office guy during the Rangers World Series runs back in 10 and 11 as well. Yep. And so he's probably worked for the Rangers and like Tom Grieve. He's worked for the Rangers in every aspect possible as a player, announcer, executive. He's done it all for this organization. And really, back when you look at his playing career, it's very similar to Evan Carter and Wyatt Langford in the sense that he leapt from AA up to the majors just after one season. And he was one of the front runners for American League Rookie of the Year that year. And it ended up going to his teammate, Mike Hargrove, in 1974.
The human rain delay.
Yeah. And, you know, that's something that's kind of a mirror image of what we could see this season with Evan Carter and Wyatt Langford.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And again, that era of the Rangers was a pretty good Ranger. That was a pretty good Ranger group. That was the Billy Martin group. Yeah. You had, you know, we all remember the David Clyde thing, but just as a team in the mid 70s and especially the late 70s, those were really good Ranger teams that in this era, you get them into the playoffs and anything could happen.
Yeah. And then the Rangers moved to Arlington in 72. And then Sundberg was drafted by the Rangers in 73. So he's basically been a part of this franchise ever since it exists, or not the franchise entirely, but when they moved to Texas, since the franchise moved to Texas, he's been with them pretty much from the beginning.
And this is when I talk about like the Rangers. So in 73, you had Whitey Herzog, and they were terrible. But then in 74, they were 84 and 76 and finished second in the league. In 75, they slipped. They finished 79 and 83. But then from 97, from 77, 94 wins. 78, 87 wins. 79, 83 wins. And then in 80 is when they kind of started falling back. But that's why I say, you know, it wasn't – everybody remembers the late 80s, Nolan Ryan. They were fun. Everybody remembers the late 90s. And then, of course, the last 13 years. Yeah. But, man, 77 to 1980, the Rangers were a great team that beat a lot of really good teams. But, yeah, so that's part of the kind of stuff we're going to be doing on these little – when we do these baseball happy hours. We'll just kind of talk our baseball hearts out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I had a good time. And thanks for everyone for viewing and interacting in the chats as well. Again, thanks to Terry and Noe for coming on. And again, y'all have a show coming up this Friday, as well as the happy hour next Monday, and then the draft show.
And then the next happy hour. Yeah, we're going to be, which is a great thing. We're loving this. And we appreciate our views on these have just exploded. You were talking about like your show last week, recorded show had is at 8,000 views.
Which is crazy.
And you're going to go back to next week. You're going to have a recorded show, right? I guess, are you just going to work? Okay, we'll talk about it off the air. But yeah, so you're going to go back to a recorded show, and you're basically. I kind of figured we could do these baseball ones like once a month or so, just a live one to kind of chat with people, and maybe next time we'll do it. We'll do it when there's a Ranger game going the whole time, and we'll put up the box score on the screen, and we can kind of follow it along.
Yeah, that sounds great to me. But yeah, this is the Texas two-seam Outdrink the Coverage happy hour. Had a great time, covered a lot of topics today, along with you, Terry, and intern Noe, who joined us for most of the show as well. Great interactions in the chat as well with Aaron, and then Mr. Ray Bennett, Terry's father, joining us as well. It was a wonderful time today, Terry. I had a lot of fun. I think we do need to do this more often.
Heck yeah, anytime you want, brother. Have a
good
good
one, man. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. Again, this is Texas Two-Seam, brought to you by Carr Motor Company in downtown Cleburne, 302 South Caddo in downtown Cleburne. You can reach them at 817-666-1111 or online at www.txcar.com. That's www.txkar.com. And again, one more sign off here. Thanks again to Terry and Noe, and thank you for tuning in to the Texas Two-Seam Podcast Happy Hour on Outdrink the Coverage, part of L4 Media. Have a great